You ever have one of those moments where a story sounds so wild, so messy, and so unbelievable that the entire internet stops what it's doing just to stare at the screen? Because that is exactly the kind of energy surrounding Johnny Dang right now. For years, he was seen as one of the most trusted names in hip-hop jewelry, the man behind the grills, the chains, the custom diamonds, the flashy pieces worn by some of the biggest rappers in the game. But now, social media is exploding with reports, rumors, and reaction videos, all centered around one shocking claim. Johnny Dang has allegedly been arrested, and suddenly, rappers who once proudly wore his jewelry are speaking up in ways nobody expected. And if that wasn't enough, some of the biggest names being dragged into the storm are not staying quiet. Fans are shocked as old complaints, side comments, suspicious interviews, and viral clips are all being pulled back into the spotlight. People are now looking at everything differently. Every grill, every chain, every pendant, every flex that once screamed luxury is now being questioned. And the craziest part? Some artists are acting like they've been trying to warn people for a long time. One insider report says this whole thing may be much deeper than just jewelry. Another rumor claims certain rappers are terrified that receipts, private conversations, and hidden business dealings could all start leaking next. Emotions are running high, alliances are starting to crack, and the rap world is looking more divided by the hour. Some people are defending Johnny, saying this could all be exaggerated internet chaos. Others are convinced this is the beginning of a much bigger downfall. So what really set this off? Why are so many rappers suddenly exposing everything right now? And how did a jeweler who built his name on trust end up at the center of one of the most explosive controversies hip-hop has seen in a long time? Because if these reports are even halfway true, this situation is about to get way uglier than anyone expected. The first thing that made this story explode was not even the arrest rumor itself. It was the way people in the rap world started reacting like they had been waiting for this exact moment. One minute, fans were scrolling past the usual celebrity gossip, and the next minute they were seeing post after post, clip after clip, with Johnny Dang's name attached to words nobody ever expected to see next to it. Fake, exposed, scam, betrayal. And once those words started floating around online, there was no putting them back in the box. What made it even worse was how fast old complaints started resurfacing. Suddenly, people were digging up videos, live streams, interviews, and random social media moments that had not seemed that serious at the time. But now, with these new reports circulating, every old complaint felt different. Every old joke suddenly sounded like a warning. Every awkward reaction started looking suspicious. Fans were shocked because the internet had turned into one giant evidence board overnight, and everyone was acting like they had finally found the missing pieces. One of the loudest names tied to the mess was Sauce Walka. Now let's be clear, we are talking about the reports, the online reactions, and the drama that people are building around them. But according to the way fans have been piecing things together, Sauce Walka's frustration may have been one of the first cracks people really paid attention to. For years, he had been seen around Johnny Dang's brand like a loyal day one. He wore the pieces proudly, promoted the image, and looked like one of those clients who had real trust in the relationship. So when his energy started changing, people noticed. In one clip that has been making the rounds again, he looked irritated in a way that felt personal. Not playful, not internet trolling, personal. And that is when fans started saying this was never just about jewelry. They started saying this looked like somebody who felt disrespected after years of loyalty. One fan wrote, "That's not how a man talks when he's just annoyed. That's how a man talks when he feels played." And honestly, that one comment alone summed up what a lot of people were thinking. Because in hip-hop, jewelry is not just decoration. It is status, it is trust, it is image, it is proof. When a rapper walks into a room shining, he's not just wearing diamonds, he's wearing reputation. So the second people started whispering that maybe some of those pieces were not what they were claimed to be, the whole thing became much bigger than a customer service issue. This was identity. This was pride. This was public embarrassment. And then came the reaction that really had social media in a chokehold, because while some artists stayed quiet, others started moving in a way that looked very telling. Fans began pointing out that certain rappers who had once shown off their Johnny Dang pieces nonstop had suddenly gone
quiet. Some were no longer posting close-up jewelry shots. Others had mysteriously switched jewelers without explanation. And of course, once the internet smells silence, it treats it like a confession. One T-page even posted, "Notice how everybody is quiet until one person gets exposed, then suddenly nobody wants to show their chain anymore." And that line spread fast because it hit the exact nerve people were already feeling. Fans were no longer just watching for direct statements. They were watching body language, timing, and behavior. And when people start analyzing behavior like detectives, the drama gets 10 times more intense. Then Kodak Black's name got dragged right into the middle of it again, and that only made things messier. Old footage started circulating where he seemed unhappy with a custom grill situation, and people immediately attached that energy to the current scandal. Now, whether that old frustration had anything to do with what is being reported now, fans did not care. In their minds, it all connected. They were building one giant storyline out of every complaint they could find, and each clip gave them another reason to believe that the shine may not have been what it looked like. One reaction account even stitched together multiple old rapper complaints into one dramatic montage, and that video absolutely took off. The comments under it were chaos. Ain't no way this many people had issues and nobody said anything sooner. They all knew. Hip-hop's biggest secret is finally cracking. This is insane if true. And once that kind of language starts taking over the conversation, the public stops treating it like gossip and starts treating it like a reckoning. But the real turning point came when people started talking about testing. Because talking is one thing, shade is one thing, complaints are one thing. But the second people started mentioning actual testing, that is when the fear really started spreading. Fans began asking the same question over and over again. If these rumors are false, then why are so many people suddenly checking their jewelry? That question lit a fire under the whole story. Some people online began claiming that artists were quietly pulling pieces out, getting second opinions, and making calls behind the scenes. Nobody wanted to be the next person embarrassed on camera. Nobody wanted to find out in public that the same chain they had flexed in a $1 million music video was now being questioned by strangers on TikTok. And in a culture where image is everything, that kind of humiliation can be worse than the money loss itself. One fake insider account even claimed, "You'd be shocked how many people are scrambling right now." Now, was that confirmed? No. But did it spread like wildfire? Absolutely. Because once people are already emotionally invested in a scandal, they do not wait for proof. They run with whatever sounds juicy enough to fit the narrative. And this narrative was too explosive for the internet to ignore. Then things got even more dramatic when one former worker allegedly began getting tied to the conversation. That changed the energy immediately. Because fans can dismiss angry customers. They can dismiss jealous rivals. They can even dismiss bitter ex-clients. But the moment someone is painted as an insider, the public starts leaning in harder. Now suddenly it's not just he said, she said. Now it is someone from inside may know what really happened. And the internet loves nothing more than an inside source. People started reposting clips, adding dramatic captions, and turning every vague statement into something much bigger. He knows too much. Watch how nervous everybody gets if he talks. This is about to expose the whole industry. The reactions became more theatrical by the hour. Fans were no longer just discussing Johnny Dang. They were discussing trust in the entire rap jewelry world. And once that door opened, everybody became a suspect. Because let's be honest, this story was never going to stay small. Not when you are dealing with flashy money, celebrity pride, public image, and accusations that strike directly at ego. If an artist feels like he got played, he's not just losing money, he's losing face. And in a world built on status, that can create a kind of anger that doesn't stay private for long. That is why so many people are now saying this whole thing was a ticking time bomb. Maybe the reports only lit the match, but according to the way fans are reacting, the fuel may have been building for years. Whispers, side eyes, silent switches, awkward reactions, half jokes, old complaints. They are all being dragged back into the light now, and the rap world looks more uncomfortable by the minute. Because once people stop admiring the shine and start asking what is really underneath it, everything changes. Because once people stop admiring the shine and start asking what is really underneath it, everything changes. And
that shift in energy is exactly what started pushing this story from messy gossip into full-blown rap world paranoia. What had once looked like confidence was now being rewatched through a completely different lens. Artists who used to grin while flashing diamonds were suddenly being studied like suspects in their own success stories, and fans were no longer impressed by the sparkle, they were suspicious of it. That is when the social media detectives started doing what they do best. They began connecting people, timelines, and business relationships in a way that made the situation feel 10 times more dangerous. One page would post an old clip of a rapper getting fitted for a grill. Another would repost a newer clip of that same artist wearing a completely different set from another jeweler. Then someone in the comments would write, "See, that's when he knew." And just like that, a random switch-up became evidence in the eyes of the internet. Chief Keef's name started coming up heavily too, and fans acted like his every move carried hidden meaning. According to the online chatter, people were convinced that artists like him were now looking at their collections very differently. Some fans were even saying there was a quiet panic moving through the culture because nobody wanted to be the one who spent 6 figures on a piece that could now become a meme. In today's internet,
Public embarrassment moves faster than any official statement ever could. And that is the part a lot of people outside the culture do not understand. When a rapper gets called out over jewelry, it is not just a purchase gone wrong. It can hit like disrespect. It can make people feel laughed at. It can turn what was supposed to be a symbol of status into a symbol of humiliation. And if there's one thing this industry does not forgive easily, it is humiliation. That is why so many fans think the reactions coming out now feel so intense. They are not just hearing frustration, they're hearing wounded pride. One blogger even said, "This is the kind of thing people stay quiet about until they know they are not the only ones." And that line stuck because it made too much sense. If one rapper feels unsure, he may stay silent. If two feel uneasy, they might still keep it behind closed doors. But the second it starts looking like multiple people may have had issues, the silence begins to crack. And once one person speaks, everybody who has ever felt slighted suddenly feels a lot braver. That may be why old comments from different artists are now being dragged back into the spotlight. Not because they directly confirmed anything, but because they suddenly feel loaded. A sarcastic laugh in an interview, a shady Instagram caption, a random switch to another jeweler, all of it is being treated like part of some giant hidden timeline. And whether that timeline is real or just internet imagination, it's driving the story forward in a huge way. Then things got even uglier when fans started framing this like a loyalty betrayal instead of just a business issue. Because if the online narrative is to be believed, some artists are not just upset about money. They're upset because they feel they were smiling in pictures with somebody they trusted while allegedly being played behind the scenes. And that kind of emotional angle always makes a story hit harder. One fan comment that went viral said, "Imagine spending years shouting somebody out just to find out you might have been helping sell your own embarrassment." That comment was brutal, but it spread because it captured the exact kind of betrayal people are projecting onto the situation. And once betrayal enters the chat, drama takes on a whole new life. You also have to remember that Johnny Dang was not just some random jeweler with a storefront. His image became part of hip-hop culture itself. For a lot of people, getting a piece from him was almost like getting stamped into a certain level of status. He was part of the fantasy, part of the image, part of the flex. So if that image gets cracked, fans don't just see one man falling, they see a whole era looking shaky. That is why people are reacting so emotionally. It's not only about one alleged arrest rumor or one scandal headline, it's about what Johnny Dang represented. And once a symbol gets questioned, people start reevaluating everything attached to it. And right in the middle of all this, the internet started dragging in stories about unpaid jewelry, messy business, and rappers allegedly owing money too. Now that opened a whole different lane of chaos, because once people heard whispers that there had already been tension over payments, deals, and custom pieces, they started asking a new question. Was this whole relationship between jewelers and rappers already more toxic than people realized? That question hit hard, because suddenly, fans were no longer seeing the glamorous side of the culture. They were seeing what looked like a behind-the-scenes world full of ego, pressure, fake smiles, and silent resentment. The kind of world where people may keep working together publicly while privately feeling disrespected. And if that is even remotely true, then this scandal did not create the tension, it just exposed it. Some people online even started saying this whole thing could split the rap jewelry world into sides. Not in a loud, dramatic, pick-a-team kind of way at first, but in a quiet loyalty war. Who still rocks with Johnny? Who has already distanced themselves? Who is defending him? Who is staying silent because they are trying not to get dragged into it? Fans were watching all of that in real time, and every little move felt loaded. When certain people stayed quiet, fans said they were scared. When others posted old jewelry photos, fans said they were trying to save face. When a few accounts defended Johnny Dang, fans accused them of protecting business relationships. Nobody could win because the internet had already decided that every action meant something. And then came the fan theories about private phone calls. This is where the drama really started sounding like reality TV. People began imagining rappers calling each other behind the scenes, asking the same nervous questions. "Bro, did you ever test your piece? You still wearing that chain? Who made your last grill?" And once those kinds of imagined conversations start living in the public mind, the story becomes bigger than facts. It becomes mythology. Now people are not just reacting to what happened, they are reacting to what they think happened behind closed doors. And honestly, that is what keeps these stories alive online. Not certainty, possibility. Because possibility lets everybody become part of the drama. Some fans even started posting videos of themselves talking directly to the camera like they were insiders. I'm telling y'all now, this is not the only name that's about to come up. If this blows all the way open, a lot of people are going to look stupid. Watch how many celebrities quietly stop wearing their old pieces. Those videos were getting thousands of views because people love the feeling that they are watching the start of a bigger collapse. And while the rumors kept spinning, one emotional layer of the story started standing out more than the rest: embarrassment. That was the energy running through everything. Not just anger, not just confusion, embarrassment. Because if the public starts laughing at your jewelry, then suddenly every photo, every performance, every old flex, every Instagram post becomes part of the joke. And for artists who built a whole visual image around shine, that can feel devastating. That is why some fans think the strongest reactions haven't even happened yet. Because when humiliation sits for too long, it usually turns into exposure. First comes silence, then comes distance, then comes somebody deciding they are done protecting people. And once that happens, the story usually gets way more personal. Because what started as a rumor about one man was now turning into a giant question hanging over the entire culture. Who knew what, and when did they know it? And the second people start asking that question, nobody feels safe anymore. And the second people start asking that question, nobody feels safe anymore. That is when the story stopped feeling like one isolated scandal and started feeling like the kind of mess that could drag half the culture into it. Because once trust gets broken in public, people do not just look at the person being accused, they start looking at everybody who stood next to him smiling like nothing was wrong. That is exactly why the so-called insider angle became such a huge part of the conversation. Fans were no longer just listening to clients complain or watching reaction pages stir the pot. Now they wanted somebody who had allegedly seen things from the inside. And once that possibility got introduced into the story, social media went completely feral with it. People started talking like they were hidden truths just waiting to spill out. Every vague clip, every unfinished sentence, every "I'm not gonna say too much" type of moment got turned into instant fuel. One of the most repeated narratives online was that there were people who had been holding on to stories for years and were only now starting to feel bold enough to let them fly. Whether that was true or not, it gave the whole drama a darker edge. Because now it was not just about jewelry, it was about secrets, about silence, about who may have stayed quiet while the shine kept selling the dream. And fans eat that kind of storyline alive. One reaction account posted, "The scary part is not what's being said now, it's what still hasn't been said yet." And that line spread everywhere because it sounded exactly like the kind of warning that keeps people glued to a story. Suddenly, the internet was not just reacting to what was already
out there, they were waiting for the next person to crack. That pressure started making every public move look suspicious. If an artist posted a selfie with an old chain, fans zoomed in. If somebody posted a new custom piece from another jeweler, fans called it a silent response. If somebody said nothing at all, fans called that damage control. The truth almost stopped mattering because perception had already taken over. And perception is dangerous when the entire story is built around image. That is what made this scandal feel so perfect for internet chaos, because jewelry is visual, rap is visual, status is visual. So the moment people start doubting what they are seeing, the whole performance gets shaky. And once the performance gets shaky, ego starts getting involved. And when ego gets involved, people start talking reckless. Some fans even started pulling up old clips of rappers proudly getting fitted, comparing those moments to how certain artists are moving now. One person on TikTok literally made a then versus now montage with dramatic music underneath it, showing artists who once looked excited about their pieces, and then cutting to newer clips where they seemed more reserved or were wearing different jewelry altogether. Was that proof of anything? Not really. But did it work on the audience? Absolutely. Because the audience was no longer looking for confirmation, they were looking for patterns. And once people think they have found a pattern, the story starts writing itself. Then there was the money angle, and that made everything even more toxic. Because while some people were focused on whether pieces were allegedly fake, others were focused on the idea that there had already been tension behind the scenes over money, tabs, custom orders, and business fallout. Fans started acting like the entire jeweler-rapper relationship had been one giant ego war disguised as luxury. And honestly, once people started framing it like that, the story became way more compelling. Because now it was not just did somebody get sold something questionable. Now it was this whole world already held together by shaky trust and expensive lies? That's a much bigger scandal. That is the kind of thing that makes people start questioning every flashy cosign, every family caption, every smiling photo from the showroom. Because if this was all really built on loyalty, then why are so many people looking funny now that the pressure is on? And that is where the emotions started getting heavier. Because behind all the jokes, memes, and reaction videos, there is a very real emotional humiliation built into this kind of scandal. Fans are laughing online, yes. T-pages are farming engagement, yes. But if even part of what is being suggested is true, then somebody out there may be feeling deeply embarrassed, deeply betrayed, and deeply angry. And embarrassed men with money and status do not always stay quiet forever. That's why a lot of fans think the real explosion may not come from internet bloggers or reaction pages at all. They think it's going to come from somebody who finally decides they are done being polite. Somebody who no longer cares about protecting relationships, business ties, or old loyalties. Because once a person starts feeling like their silence only protected the wrong people, they usually start talking very differently. And if that happens here, this whole thing could turn personal very fast. One of the most dramatic fan theories going around is that some artists may already be comparing notes behind the scenes, not just about jewelry quality, but about prices, promises, deals, and how they were treated privately versus publicly. Now again, that's internet theory, not fact. But the reason it's spreading is because it feels believable to people, and when a rumor feels believable, it becomes almost as powerful as proof online. Imagine how messy that gets if true. Imagine one rapper hearing that another got a better piece, a better deal, or better treatment after spending less money. Imagine somebody realizing they were sold exclusivity while somebody else got the same thing cheaper. Imagine somebody finding out the person they thought was family was just treating them like another invoice. That's not just a business dispute anymore. That's ego warfare. And ego warfare in hip-hop almost never stays quiet. That's why fans are now saying the arrest reports may have only been the spark, while the real fire is everything that people have been quietly holding in for years. According to the way social media is framing it, this situation may have opened a door that was already weak on the hinges. All it needed was one hard push. Then things got even more theatrical when some people started saying this could damage more than just one name. They began claiming that if this story keeps growing, it could make fans start looking at the entire custom jewelry game differently. And honestly, that may be one
of the biggest consequences of all. Because once fans lose blind trust in the flex stops hitting the same. That chain no longer screams success the way it used to. That grill no longer looks untouchable. That iced out pendant no longer feels automatic. Instead of admiration, it starts attracting questions. Who made that? Did he test that? Is that real or just expensive looking? And that shift is brutal, because once public doubt attaches itself to luxury, it changes the emotional value of the whole thing. Suddenly, the thing that was supposed to make you look powerful becomes something you have to defend. And nobody in rap wants to have to defend their jewelry. That is why this whole story feels so dangerous to people. Not just because of one headline, not just because of one alleged scandal, but because it strikes directly at one of the culture's most visible status symbols. And when you mess with status symbols, you mess with identity. So now everybody is watching, not just for what gets said next, but for who says it. Because if one more major voice steps in, if one more artist decides to stop being careful and starts getting specific, the whole tone of this scandal could shift overnight. And the wild part is, you can already feel that tension building. Like the room is too quiet. Like people know something. Like somebody is about to say way more than they should. And once that kind of energy starts hovering over a story, it usually means the real mess has not even started yet. And once that kind of energy starts hovering over a story, it usually means the real mess has not even started yet. Because scandals like this do not usually explode all at once. They unravel, slowly, publicly, and in the most humiliating way possible. First, people deny, then they dodge, then they start talking around the truth, and then, almost always, somebody gets emotional and says too much. That is exactly the stage fans think this whole situation is heading toward now. Because as the rumors kept spreading, the conversation started moving away from "did this happen?" and more toward who is going to crack first. And that is where the story became way more dramatic. People were no longer just focused on Johnny Dang. Now they were watching the rappers, the clients, the former friends, the quiet associates, the people who might know just enough to make things ugly if they stop holding back. And when you add fame, money, ego, and public embarrassment into the same room, somebody usually breaks. Fans have especially been locked in on the possibility that this could turn into a full-blown chain reaction. Not just one artist venting, but multiple people slowly stepping forward once they realize they are not alone. Because let's be honest, silence feels a lot safer when you think you're the only one with a bad experience. But the second it starts looking like others may have stories too, that silence gets harder to maintain. That's how internet scandals turn into public takedowns. One T channel even posted, "Watch how many people suddenly become brave once one major artist says names." And that post got traction because it felt exactly like the kind of thing that happens in celebrity drama. People stay careful until the room shifts. Then suddenly everyone has been meaning to say something. And if that happens here, the emotional fallout could get very nasty very fast. Because at that point, it would no longer just be about jewelry quality or suspicious business rumors. It would become a public battle over credibility, over who is lying, over who is bitter, over who is exposing and who is spinning.
And once credibility becomes the battlefield, nobody involved gets to stay clean. That is where fans started imagining the ugliest possible version of this story. They started saying, what if one artist comes out and claims he got played? Then another says he had doubts too. Then somebody else says they heard whispers years ago. Then an old employee decides to tell their truth. Then receipts start leaking. Then screenshots show up. Then private conversations get hinted at. And before you know it, what started as a rumor becomes a whole internet series with a new episode every single day. That's the kind of chaos people feel building around this. And to make things even more intense, fans have now started turning the whole story into a morality play. They are no longer just asking whether certain reports are true. They are asking bigger emotional questions. Was greed involved? Did fame make people reckless? Were certain clients treated differently based on clout? Did some people stay quiet because the image was too profitable to question? Those kinds of questions are why this drama is hitting so hard. Because even if the exact details remain messy, the emotional themes are easy for people to latch onto. Betrayal, ego, status, deception, humiliation. Those are the ingredients that always keep a scandal alive longer
than it should be. And somewhere in the middle of all that, the fans started choosing sides. That is when you know a story has really crossed over. Because once the audience starts dividing itself into teams, the scandal stops being a moment and starts becoming a culture war. Suddenly, you had one side saying this is all internet exaggeration, and that Johnny Dang built too much over too many years to be reduced to gossip. They were saying people are trying to tear down a name that became legendary. They were calling it jealousy, clout chasing, and opportunism. But the other side, they were not hearing any of that. They were saying the old complaints were too many, the awkward reactions were too weird, the timing was too suspicious, the silence was too loud. And most importantly, they were saying if there is smoke like this coming from this many directions, then fans have every reason to ask questions. That divide made everything even more toxic, because now every new clip, every new comment, every new rumor was being interpreted in completely opposite ways depending on who you believed. If somebody defended Johnny, one side said that was proof he still had real loyalty. The other side said it was proof people were protecting business ties. If somebody stayed silent, one side said they were being mature. The other side said they were scared. If somebody laughed at the situation, one side said they were joking. The other side said they were indirectly confirming something. Nobody could do anything without it being turned into content. And that kind of pressure changes people. Because once your name is floating around in a scandal this big, even normal behavior starts feeling dangerous. Every move gets overanalyzed. Every post gets screen recorded. Every caption gets dissected. And for public figures who already live under constant scrutiny, that kind of atmosphere can be suffocating. Fans are shocked by how quickly this has gone from wild headline to full community investigation. But maybe the most dramatic part of all is how personal the story has started to feel. What made it so explosive is that the internet did not keep this at the level of business. They pulled it into emotion. They started imagining betrayal between people who once looked close. They started framing it like this was not just about transactions, but about trust being broken inside a culture built on ego and image. That's what makes this hit differently. Because if a stranger scams you, that is one kind of pain. But if someone you publicly stood beside, shouted out, and trusted with your image allegedly lets you down, that hits way deeper. That feels like disrespect. And disrespect is one of the fastest ways to turn a private problem into a public war. That's why some fans are now predicting that the next phase of this story will not be subtle at all. They think the quiet tension is eventually going to snap. Maybe it will happen through an emotional livestream. Maybe it will happen through a shady interview. Maybe it will happen when somebody gets asked one direct question at the wrong time and decides not to hold back anymore. But however it happens, people are convinced there is still another shoe waiting to drop. And the truth is, they may be right. Because stories like this almost never end cleanly. Not when there is too much pride involved. Not when too many people have something to lose. Not when the internet is rewarding every new detail with millions of views and endless commentary. That's why this doesn't feel like a one-day controversy. It feels like a slow-burning public unraveling. And while all of this is happening, one question keeps getting louder than the rest. If all these reactions are just coincidence, then why does everybody look so uncomfortable? That's the question fans cannot stop asking. Why does the silence feel so strategic? Why do the reactions feel so tense? Why are people moving like they are trying not to say the wrong thing? Those are the kinds of details that keep scandals alive even when no new facts drop. Because tension itself becomes content. And right now, there is a lot of tension in the air. Enough to make people believe this whole thing could still take an even uglier turn. Enough to make fans think the real exposure may not come from the headlines at all, but from the people who were closest to the shine. And once the people closest to the shine start feeling burned, the fallout usually doesn't stay polished for long. And once the people closest to the shine start feeling burned, the fallout usually doesn't stay polished for long. It gets emotional, it gets petty, it gets loud, and most of all, it gets impossible to control. That's exactly why so many people online are now treating this like the beginning of a bigger collapse, rather than the end of one isolated controversy.
Because once a luxury image starts cracking in public, people don't just question the product, they question the
entire world built around it. And that is where this story has gotten especially dangerous. What started as online reports and reaction clips has now turned into something much bigger in the minds of fans. It has become symbolic. To a lot of people watching, this is no longer just about one jeweler or one alleged scandal. It is about whether the rap world has been living inside a fantasy built on blind trust, inflated ego, and expensive appearances for far too long. And if that is the emotional lens people are using, then this situation is not fading anytime soon. Because once fans start seeing a scandal as symbolic, they stop waiting for closure. They start hunting for meaning. That is why every little detail keeps blowing up. A repost becomes a statement. A deleted story becomes a clue. A quiet switch in who somebody tags becomes proof that something shifted behind the scenes. And while some of that is obviously internet exaggeration, the reason it keeps landing is because this entire situation has already tapped into something people secretly love watching: powerful names looking vulnerable. That is the real reason this has spread the way it has. People are not just curious about whether reports are true. They are fascinated by the possibility that the people who once looked untouchable may have been just as exposed, uncertain, and manipulated as everyone else. And if there is one thing the internet loves, it is watching confidence turn into discomfort. That is why so many of the fan reactions feel almost theatrical now. People are narrating this like a season finale. They are talking about the downfall, the betrayal arc, the exposure phase, and the people who are about to turn on each other. The entire thing has started sounding less like a business scandal and more like a reality show reunion, where everybody comes in pretending to be calm and leaves with friendships destroyed. And honestly, that may be why this story is hitting as hard as it is, because it has all the ingredients people cannot resist: money, fame, trust, secrets, humiliation, and the possibility that the people involved may still be holding back the ugliest part. That last part is what keeps the audience locked in. Because right now, fans don't feel like they have seen the full picture. They feel like they are standing outside a room where something much messier is still happening, and every few hours, another crack in the door lets a little more out. That feeling is addictive. It keeps people refreshing. It keeps them commenting. It keeps them digging. And the more they dig, the more emotionally invested they become. That's how stories like this grow way beyond the original headline. And there's another reason this is not going away anytime soon. Embarrassment does not disappear quietly. If even one major artist feels like they were publicly made to look foolish, that kind of feeling has a way of resurfacing later in ways nobody expects. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But eventually, if the resentment is real, it usually leaks out. Through a bar in a song, through a random podcast moment, through a messy live, through a shady comment that was never meant to become a headline but absolutely does. That's how unresolved humiliation behaves in celebrity culture. It waits. Then it comes back louder. That's why some fans believe this entire scandal may still be sitting on delayed explosions. Not because every rumor will prove true, but because too many emotions seem to be attached to it already. And once emotions get attached, people stop behaving strategically. They start reacting personally. And personal reactions are what turn internet mess into unforgettable drama. Because let's be real, if this were only about facts, the conversation would have died down already. But it is not only about facts. It's about trust getting questioned in a world where trust is supposed to look expensive. It's about image being tested in a world where image is everything. It's about people wondering whether some of the loudest symbols of success were built on something a lot shakier than they ever imagined. That's why this has rattled so many people. Not because everybody suddenly became a jeweler expert overnight, but because the story attacks the illusion. And when an illusion starts falling apart, people cannot look away. So now the rap world is in that awkward stage where everybody is pretending to be normal while the internet keeps watching for the next slip. Fans are shocked, emotions are running high, and the atmosphere feels tense in a way that nobody can fully hide. Some people are still trying to laugh it off. Others are quietly distancing themselves. And a lot of people seem to be waiting to see who speaks too boldly first. Because once that happens, the whole thing could shift again. And maybe that is the wildest part of all. This story still doesn't feel finished. It feels paused. Like everybody involved knows one
move could make it 10 times uglier. Like there are conversations happening behind closed doors that the public has only started to guess at. Like somebody, somewhere, is deciding whether to keep protecting the image or finally expose what they really know. And until that tension breaks, this drama is going to keep feeding itself. Because in the court of public opinion, perception often moves faster than truth. And right now, perception is tearing through this story like wildfire. So whether these reports grow into something bigger, fade into internet legend, or trigger even more shocking reactions from the rap world, one thing is already clear. The shine does not look the same anymore. And once the shine changes, the whole illusion changes with it. And once the shine changes, the whole illusion changes with it. That is really why this entire story has people so locked in right now. Because whether you believe these reports are being blown out of proportion, whether you think there is more truth hidden underneath the surface, or whether you feel like this is just the internet doing what it does best, one thing is obvious. This situation has made a lot of people look at the rap jewelry world very differently. Fans are shocked, emotions are running high, and the reactions keep getting louder by the day. Some people are saying this could be the beginning of one of the biggest image collapses hip-hop has seen in a long time. Others believe this is only the first layer, and that if more artists start speaking up, the entire conversation could get even messier from here. And honestly, that is the biggest question hanging over all of this right now. Is this the full story, or is the real exposure still waiting to happen? Because if even a few of these rumors and reactions are pointing towards something bigger, then this may not just be about one name. This could end up exposing a much deeper side of the culture that fans were never supposed to see. And if that happens, the fallout could be absolutely insane. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think Johnny Dang is being unfairly targeted by the internet right now? Or do you think these reactions from rappers are a sign that something has been off for a long time? And which rapper do you think knows more than they are saying? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this one is definitely not over yet. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next time we break down the wildest celebrity drama, rap chaos, and internet scandals making everyone talk. And once you finish this video, click on the next one on your screen, because if you thought this story was messy, the next one might be even crazier.